Welcome to War Bios, the podcast that delves into the intricacies of military history's most pivotal conflicts. I'm your host, General Biography, and today we're going to explore one of the American Civil War's most significant battles, the Battle of Murfreesboro, fought in 1862. This clash of arms would prove a turning point in the war's Western theater, testing the mettle of both Union and Confederate forces. The Battle of Murfreesboro, also known as the Battle of Stones River, was the culmination of a series of events that began months earlier. In the spring of 1862, Union forces under Major General Don Carlos Buell had launched a campaign to capture the strategic city of Corinth, Mississippi, a crucial railroad junction that controlled access to the Deep South. The Corinth Campaign, which commenced on April 29, 1862, was marked by a series of skirmishes and battles as Buell's army pushed deeper into Tennessee. The Union forces ultimately captured Corinth on May 30, 1862, but not before Confederate General P.G.T. Beauregard had evacuated his troops, leaving behind a trail of destruction and scorched earth. This strategic withdrawal would later prove to be a clever ploy, as it allowed the Confederates to regroup and launch a counterattack. As Buell's army continued its advance into Tennessee, Confederate General Braxton Bragg saw an opportunity to strike back at the Union forces. In June 1862, Bragg began to concentrate his troops in the vicinity of Chattanooga, Tennessee, with the intention of launching a campaign to drive the Union army out of the state. This bold plan would ultimately lead to the Battle of Murfreesboro, as Bragg's army marched northward towards Nashville, intent on capturing the city and splitting the Union forces. The armies of Bragg and Buell were on a collision course, with the fate of Middle Tennessee hanging in the balance. The region was crucial to both sides as it provided access to the Cumberland River, a vital transportation artery that connected the Ohio River to the Mississippi River. Control of this region would grant the victor a significant strategic advantage, allowing them to dictate the flow of troops and supplies. The armies of Bragg and Buell were marching towards a showdown, with the city of Murfreesboro situated squarely in the middle. This small town, nestled in the heart of Rutherford County, would soon become the focal point of one of the most brutal battles of the American Civil War. The armies of the Union and Confederacy were poised to clash in a frenzy of bloodshed and chaos, with the outcome hanging precariously in the balance. As the winter of 1862-1863 approached, the armies of Union Major General William Rosecrans and Confederate General Braxton Bragg faced off near Murfreesboro, Tennessee. The Union Army of the Cumberland, numbering around 43,000 soldiers, was determined to drive the Confederates out of Middle Tennessee, while Bragg's Army of Mississippi, with approximately 37,000 troops, aimed to defeat the Union forces and maintain control of the region. On December 31, 1862, the battle began as Confederate forces launched a surprise attack on the Union right flank near the Stones River. The fighting was intense, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Union lines were initially broken, but Rosecrans' troops rallied and managed to hold their ground. As the day wore on, the Confederates continued to push forward, but the Union Army's defenses stiffened and the rebel advance was ultimately repelled. One of the most notable aspects of the Battle of Murfreesboro was the heroic actions of individual soldiers. For example, Colonel William B. Hazen's brigade, which held the Union center, came under withering fire from Confederate artillery and infantry. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Hazen's men stood firm, buying precious time for the rest of the Union Army to regroup and counterattack. As the battle raged on, the human cost became increasingly apparent. The fighting was brutal, with soldiers on both sides suffering horrific wounds. The cry of the wounded and dying filled the air as medical teams struggled to cope with the sheer number of casualties. By the end of the first day, over 12,000 soldiers had been killed or wounded, a staggering toll that would only continue to mount in the days to come. On January 1, 1863, the battle resumed, with both sides engaging in fierce fighting along the Stones River. The Union Army's artillery played a crucial role, blasting Confederate positions and helping to break the rebel lines. As the day drew to a close, Bragg's forces began to withdraw, leaving behind many of their dead and wounded. The Battle of Murfreesboro was one of the bloodiest conflicts of the American Civil War, with over 23,000 casualties suffered by both sides. Although the Union Army had technically won the battle, The cost had been staggering, and the outcome was far from certain. As the Confederate Army of Mississippi withdrew from the battlefield on January 3, 1863, they left behind a trail of destruction and devastation. The town of Murfreesboro was in ruins, with many buildings destroyed or damaged, and the surrounding countryside was littered with the bodies of the dead and wounded. The Union Army of the Cumberland, though victorious, had suffered heavily, with over 12,000 casualties, including killed, wounded, or missing. In the months following the battle, the Union Army continued to occupy Middle Tennessee, using Murfreesboro as a key supply depot and base of operations. The city became an important hub for the Union war effort, with thousands of soldiers passing through its streets on their way to other battles in the Western Theater. As the Union Army consolidated its control over the region, they began to implement policies aimed at reconstructing and reorganizing the local economy and society. One of the most significant consequences of the Battle of Murfreesboro was the impact it had on the war's Western Theater. The Confederate defeat marked a turning point in the struggle for control of Tennessee and Kentucky, as Union forces gained the upper hand and began to push deeper into Confederate territory. The Battle of Murfreesboro also had significant strategic implications for the Confederacy. The loss of Middle Tennessee meant that the Confederates could no longer threaten the Ohio River Valley or the vital transportation hubs in southern Illinois and Indiana. Additionally, the battle marked a shift in Confederate strategy, as General Bragg's Army of Mississippi was forced to retreat and regroup, ultimately leading to a reorganization of the Confederate High Command. In the years following the war, the Battle of Murfreesboro became an important symbol of the bravery and sacrifice of the soldiers who fought on both sides. The Stones River National Battlefield, established in 1960, commemorates the battle and honors the memory of those who died or were wounded during the fighting. Today, visitors can walk the battlefield, exploring the trenches, earthworks, and monuments that mark the site of this pivotal conflict. The battle marked a turning point in the war, as Union forces gained momentum and began to push the Confederacy back on all fronts. It also highlighted the brutal reality of the American Civil War, with its staggering casualties, destroyed cities, and shattered lives. In conclusion, the Battle of Murfreesboro was a pivotal moment in the American Civil War, marking a turning point in the struggle for control of Tennessee and Kentucky. The battle's legacy can still be seen today, in the Stones River National Battlefield, and in the continued fascination with this brutal and bloody conflict. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.